Jason, something that, I'm kind of naive to since I've left the patrol in 2015. I'm naive to the shifts and changes in the cartel space. For those who are listening, who are probably completely naive to the whole concept, is there any way you can give us kind of a breakdown of the basics of who's kind of controlling the borders currently, or who's
Sure.
that's something that I've kind of steered away from in my career. Just after I left, I was like,
Yeah.
okay, keep moving.
What you need to know, really, the big change is that the frontera, as we call it, the area along our border region, has always been considered by the cartels the war zone, that or the front line, and so they would send their operatives up there to control that space because it's prime real estate. That's the way everyone needs to understand. And the plaza is really what they call a municipality for us in the United States. So, Reynosa, for example, is a plaza across from McAllen, or Miguel Alemán is a plaza across from Roma, Texas. Really, it's a municipality. And so when you look at from Brownsville to Miguel Alemán, that is run, or to Roma, Texas, that is run by Cartel de Golfo, known as CDG, one of the oldest, really at one time a very strong cartel. I worked them for years. From there over, just a little further west from Del Rio, that is run by Cartel del Este, formerly known as the Los Zetas. We worked them extensively. They were forced to rebrand or fall forever. That's how they became CDN. Then from there, you start to have La Línea, known as the Line, who used to be the Juarez cartel. Once you get to the plaza of Juarez, most of that is controlled by Chapo Guzman's sons, Ivan, and the Los Chapitos cells. They run everything through Arizona, all the way across, all the way to California.
Wow.
So the Sinaloa cartel really is the dominant cartel in control of those plazas. Now, you got a lot of infighting in Caborca. The Salazars, a well-known family directly connected to Ivan through family and blood. They are starting to break up, trying to get away from the Sinaloa a bit after 4 years of battling in Caborca and along those regions in Aravaca. That's why right now with the videos I showed you a little while ago, you got Mayo Zambada's cell there fighting the Chapito cells, the sons of Chapo Guzman. There's some infighting there. It's been going on for about the last 3.5 to 4 years. But that's how the makeup is. So it's very easy to understand the trends that impact us and the American people. Sinaloa is responsible mostly for deadly fentanyl flowing into the United States. Cartel Jalisco New Generation, the most hyper-violent cartel in Mexico, is really producing more deadly methamphetamine. They're second to fentanyl, and they're working side by side along the border region with Cartel de Golfo, which is why Texas is now really getting hit hard with methamphetamine and deadly fentanyl in our part of the region. So where they operate, how they operate, really impacts different parts of the country based on their contacts with U.S.-based street gangs, Tier 1 gangs, and other organizations where they have control domestically in the United States.
I grew up in the Los Angeles, California area in the 90s, prevalent gang era, right? A lot of my friends were associated with gangs, my family and whatnot. I've never heard the term Tier 1 gang. Who would fall into the kind of the list of a Tier 1 gang?
Yeah, it's a great question. One, cartels, some of them. The Los Zetas is a great example. So let me go into what is that. First off, in Texas, we created a criteria. What we recognize is that if you were going to work in the United States with the cartels, they were working with certain people. So we tiered them. And we said, okay, if you operate in so many regions of the state of Texas, if you operate with so many operators, if you recruit juveniles domestically in our state, and if you have certain capabilities with certain cartels, then we're going to create a tiered program that would focus 2,600 law enforcement agencies in Texas, focusing on these priority targets domestically. MS-13 is a great example, who's been contracting down there. Mexican Mafia. Look, Mexican Mafia's operations with the Zetas would stun the average American if they knew. In Texas, M is what we call MA, which is Mexican Mafias. Their constitution is out of San Antonio. Yet they've been running operations with the Zetas going back that I can tell you for sure when I was stationed as a lieutenant in Laredo, Texas in 2009. And they were literally doing hits, learning tradecraft, basic, intermediate, advanced training. They had cells in Laredo, Texas that were killing Americans throughout the country for reduced loads of narcotics. And at the same time, they were operating in Mexico, supporting the Zetas operations. But yet they deconflicted out of San Antonio. So when I tell you, as a former law enforcement officer, how far behind the United States government is in illuminating to the American people the threat that we face from the cartels, Tier 1 gangs, U.S.-based street gangs, This is why I've come out to say we've got to designate them as terrorists, and we've got to operate at a level we never have, because the threat walks among us, and it's just to our south.
Yeah, you said that they train. You said intermediate and experienced. Like, do they do military style training in these cartels and some of these tier 1 gangs?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Nothing new there. Yeah. So let's talk about this. This is a really good question. The FARC, right? The FARC was a designated foreign terrorist organization under the United States government for many years. Under the Biden administration, it was just removed. But the FARC, operating out of Colombia, has been providing tradecraft and training to the Zetas for many years. This is well documented. Anybody can Google this.
Yep.
The U.S. intelligence agencies know it. If you look at the Papa bombs that are made by CJNG, that tradecraft is directly coming from the FARC. And so, yeah, they've been working with them. Look at the Zetas. What were the Zetas originally? Let's really talk about that, right? They came from Mexican special forces, right? And they were mostly Sedena operatives who came over. Originally started with 7, then 14. That's where Mamito and many of the other guys came from. And they started working for OCL Cardenas as enforcers. So, OCL Cardenas used to say about the Zetas that, they're my zapatas, right? They're my shoes. That's why they're called the Z's. A lot of them, people are not aware of that, because he used to wear them like his shoes. They were his enforcement wing. And so working with special forces, that's where they gain tradecraft, Vince. In the old days, you're going to go do a dope deal in South Texas, and, we're going to do the deal at 7 o'clock at night, right, in a parking lot of like HEB, or I'm going to buy 10 kilos of cocaine. We're on doper time, right? That's what we used to call it. I know you remember that term,
Yeah.
right? And so the dope deal may go down at 2 a.m. because, they're sleeping all day from partying all night. There was no tradecraft. The Zetas were different. And what they brought to the Mexican cartels was tradecraft and discipline. When they said they were going to be somewhere at 7, at 6 o'clock, they arrived ready to operate, ready to do what needs to be done, doing their secondary and third checks and operationalizing everything. This is why everybody wanted to be a Zeta. This is why they spread like a virus across Mexico. And the other cartels learned very rapidly, very quickly. Either you gain that same capability or that we are falling. And that's why enforcement wings across Mexico were developed within all of these cartels. And now, what was violence at the frontera, where the war zone traditionally was, now you see the violence across Mexico impacting Mexican citizens at a level that really, we should be talking about on nightly news every single night.